Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I am your host, Rex Bear, and we have Eve Lorgan with us, a dedicated counseling professional, UFO alien abduction researcher, also hatha yogi and author. She began her pioneering work with alien abductions while earning her master's degree in counseling psychology in 1992. She also holds a BS in biochemistry and worked in the biotechnology industry for 7 years. Eve started a support group back in '94 in San Diego County, California, for experiencers of anonymous trauma and continues to consult with anomalous trauma clients worldwide today while living in Western North Carolina. She was a close associate of the late Barbara Bartholock and is dedicated in continuing and expanding the work of the late Dr. Carla Turner. Eve, it's a pleasure to have you on the show with us here at the Leak Project. How the heck are you?
Oh, I'm very good. We're experiencing a loud thunderstorm right now in the mountains of Western North Carolina, so you may hear some noise in the background. Otherwise, I'm fine, and I'm happy to be on your show.
Yeah, it's great to have us. I actually had one of our listeners request to get you on, and I started going through your book and your website, evelorgan.com, and I was like, wow, we've definitely got to get this person on our show to relay their information, because a lot of this stuff you talk about, I know people personally that I think might have the alien love bite. And also you put two really good books about this anomaly together. The first one was called The Love Bite, Alien Interference of Human Love Relationships. And then you came out with, I guess, a second part of that, or it's called The Dark Side of Cupid. So let's definitely get into that. But tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll segue into your work.
Okay. Well, I've been doing this work probably for 20 plus years now. I've always had an interest in the anomalous, paranormal, UFO kinds of things, because as I grew up, we experienced things like that as a family. So, and I've had experiences myself that revolve around the alien abduction and interference phenomena. So I wanted to learn more about that as I started experiencing more things and working with other people. I just wanted to do more in-depth research. So I ended up getting a master's in counseling psychology and really aimed my work towards understanding trauma and anomalous trauma, and then applying that to what I understood with people who are having mostly alien abductions and visitations. And as time went on, of course, there was much more surrounding that phenomena that really wasn't just, quote, alien abductions, but tended to surround that experience related to paranormal phenomena and experiences or other kinds of unusual traumas. Let's say, things like mind control, MK Ultra, ritual abuse, just the whole range actually is a lot. And there are connections between all of these things. So I ended up actually learning a lot about what we call the MILAB experience, or what actually Dr. Carla Turner brought out in her books, the military abductions and how they related to people having alien abduction experiences. So, and it was Barbara Bartholock, correspondence with her after Dr. Carla Turner died, that we really started understanding more in depth what the phenomena was about. So Barbara Bartholock had done a lot of research doing hypnotic regressions with alien abductees and contactees for years. And she also worked with Jacques Vallée in her early years of investigating UFO sightings and crop circles and different things. So she actually helped me understand things that were actually going on in my support group at the same time that related to what she called, well, we call it the alien love bite, but she would also refer to this phenomena as the drama of the alien contrived love obsession phenomena, where people who are already having experiences with alien abductions in their history, let's say multiple alien visitations in their life or in their family line, that they tended to have other experiences that were related to that kind of interference that involved their love relationships, where they actually remembered, let's say, their alien handlers or their ET, contacts were actually setting them up with another partner that they would meet later in life. And oftentimes this involved a love obsession or a type of drama that would play out according to a type of scenario that was that were able to identify as something that the aliens were contriving. So that actually kind of started my writing, although I did earlier writings actually about the alien implants and the fluorescence phenomena. So early in, I think it was in the mid-90s, I actually was doing some research with Daryl Sims and Dr. Roger Lear, where I attended the first alien implant surgeries that were in Ventura, California. There was actually 2 sets of surgeries, and they were filmed, and I was able to interview the people who were having the surgeries. And so I did a before and after interview with 5 of the people who had alien implant surgeries and, brought that out. So a lot of my work actually started out with the alien abduction phenomena and the kinds of things that happened in their lives. But one of the things that I thought was most important that really wasn't being discussed in the research community was how their lives, let's say abductees' lives, were being interfered with on other levels or existing beyond what they call the medical abduction kind of syndrome that would happen when they would be taken, or things that they would recall during a visitation or an abduction that would revolve around medical experimentation or the hybrid breeding program. But there was other things that occurred that were just as important that weren't really being discussed, and side effects as well. So we learned that, working in the support group and talking to Barbara Bartholick and Carla Turner's work, and came to find out that there's just a lot going on.
Now, the implants that you had an opportunity to be a part of, talking to the people after they had them taken out, did you ever see them, the implants themselves?
Yes. Yeah, Roger Lear and Daryl Sims actually did publications and took photographs, and I saw some of them. And they were, magnified so you could look at them, and then they were analyzed. So I did see them, and he had done, in excess of 28 to 30 surgeries. Probably he's passed away now, but there's been more surgeries since that time where other results have come forward that certainly suggest something unusual happening that is beyond our current science as it's known in the civilian world anyway. So there is something to the implants on not only a physical level, but what I think is happening on more of an energetic level, which tends to be what's more often reported by people when they talk about, oh, I'm going to have like an implant removal. It's really energetic type of psychic surgery kind of thing that they're going to do, a clearing. But they're just as real in terms of like attachments and things that are done to their energy body by these beings. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening, and it's unfortunate because people laugh at this phenomena. They don't think it's true. They think people are making it up or all under mind control. But there's definitely things happening, and there's enough medical evidence to show certainly something physical or medical is happening, and they don't understand it. But there's definitely something going on.
Well, I definitely like Daryl. I've had a chance to talk to him a couple of times, and once here at the Leak Project. He thinks that all of the different ETs are actually clones, and he talks about them like different car models. He goes, well, the Nordics, those are the Corvettes, and he says there's different types of grays, and some of them are smarter than others, and he thinks that because he says from all of the experiences he has had, he's never seen a belly button, so he thinks that they're cloned. And, very nice guy to talk to. Do you have that similar theory?
Well, I definitely think that many of the bodies, let's say if they have physical bodies, that they may have been genetically engineered by some species so that they can interact with us. And then they also have, let's say, an astral form sometimes, like what we call the non-corporeal form, which may take on any number of images or masks. So they have different models, so to speak. And then some are actually physical, and we'll call that corporeal versus the incorporeal ones. And so I definitely would concur that they could take on many different forms depending on what their agenda is and how they do it and what they want us to believe. So that's why in my second book called The Dark Side of Cupid, I'm not so specific about, let's say, the type of aliens, even if they're even aliens who are interacting with people, but there are certain images that are observed in people's clairvoyant perception or otherwise. And they don't always, there's not always, let's say, an alien gray or a reptilian, that there's other forms. So
Now, let's talk about the alien bite here again. So, how would somebody know or have a good idea that they've been struck down by E.T. Cupid?
Yeah, well, we used to
The
call it
reptilian Cupid. I'm sorry, I had to say that.
oh, it's amazing. Well, if it hadn't been for Barbara Bartholick and Carla Turner really helping me understand it, I may have overlooked it and not thought that it was even part of the phenomena. But it actually happened to me, and it happened to several people in my group at the same time. And that's when I really got the inside story on how this thing plays out. So I would say that for the alien love bite, it tends to happen to someone who has multiple alien visitation experiences, whether it's abduction or contact, it doesn't really matter. If they're a lifelong person or it happens in their family, they're likely to have a kind of setup in the relationships. So sometimes they'll have, let's say, a joint abduction or joint experience with another person who's being chosen by the same alien handlers to connect with them. And they may bond them during childhood and several times in different kinds of situations where they're in these it's either a real physical event or some kind of quasi virtual reality or an astral thing. But it doesn't matter. The effect is the same. You tend to be bonded with the same person several times from childhood, and then you meet later in life, and sometimes you maintain the memory. Like with people with good memory, they may remember these things, but most people don't remember all the times they've been taken. And let's say then they meet that person later in life. They may have an instant attraction or a deja vu of having known them before. They may have, this person's like their soulmate or their twin flame. And then they may have increased alien visitations, or what I call the astral visitations, either with aliens or with their partner, or different kinds of scenarios may play out during that connection phase. So the aliens tended to interact more during the phase of the love bite because there was a lot of drama, and there was a lot of high emotional highs and crashing lows and psychic phenomena. Sometimes the Kundalini energy would be activated. So this is actually all explained thoroughly in my Love Bite book, where I go through several case histories of people who've had the alien love bite, where they knew, the kinds of aliens that put them together, and the alien greys or the reptilians or the military. What Barbara Bartholick had helped me understand was that behind the most dramatic alien love bite situations tended to be the reptilian type of aliens, and they would often masquerade even as Nordics. Or sometimes they would have, the greys come and do some of the work, and then the reptilians would do the other kind of work. So sometimes many different alien species would appear to be working together as a type of team. And this was exemplified in the Ted Rice case, which I did in the Love Bite book, the portion that was about the love connection experience. So that's why I think it's not just one type of alien. Sometimes there's several working that seemingly in conjunction with one another. So the love obsession and a very strong connection with the other person tended to happen, but it tended to be one-sided, or it was both people had this strong connection and then one was switched off. And what we discovered was that the switching off was often correlated with, let's say, someone was bonded with another person. Maybe they both had a strong connection. They may or may not both have memory. But the ones in my book, they both had enough memory to know that something happened. And then let's say one person just suddenly doesn't have feelings anymore, something happens and they basically switch off and they're psychically unplugged from the other person. Sometimes that happens after an alien abduction, where they may or may not remember what happened during that abduction, but where the aliens basically switched them off and decided that they're not going to do that anymore, and then it leaves the other person pining away in unrequited love. And so the other person's still feeling linked in, but the other person is suddenly switched off. So that's the kind of thing that would happen, and that would create a lot of the high emotional drama and yearning and these emotions that we believe that the aliens are actually feeding off of. I don't think they need to study us anymore, if you ask me. I think they know enough about us, and that this is more of a harvesting operation.
That's actually what I was going to mention, because I feel the same way with what you're saying and the research that I've done. this energy that's created from emotions, it's so powerful. And I think to myself, why are people, human beings, so important? What makes us different versus a cat, a dog, an insect, a plant? And obviously we have the ability to do something either amazing or something absolutely horrible. You know, it's our choice. But human beings, with our emotions and the way that we're put together, our connection with source, it seems like these other entities come around people at certain times. They cause these certain reactions and these emotions. And like you said, they feed off of it like a buffet. For them, it's like living through, it's like a drug to them almost.
Yes. And I think there's more of a, what I call a parasitic function of some of these beings that are playing aliens or ETs, but I think they can take on whatever form suits the agenda that they have, so that if we believe in them and we open up ourselves up to them, it allows them to continue their feeding operation. And, I mean, I've had clients where it's more like, let's say, the Dark Side of Cupid book, where someone has a relationships that tends to have the same earmarks as a love bite, but it's not always clear that they're, let's say, someone with a multiple alien abduction history kind of thing, where there's not a lot of overt evidence of being taken and that kind of thing, but they'll have the same qualities in the love relationships where they know there's something happening. So I've had sessions with people where they actually discovered that there was an insectoid, let's say, attached to many members of the family, but it would act in a parasitic way, so that they would create these emotional dramas and almost like a psychic vampirism kind of thing going on, and it would affect relationships so that they could actually link in, let's say, one of the chakras and create a more heightened emotional triggering in the other person, so that the other person would be almost caught in a spell. Which is interesting, because in the love bite, the love obsession aspect is like an addictive drug that can put the other person in a spell. And so one of the most difficult things of the love bite is it's like you're under a spell, and it's very addictive, this bliss feeling. But it's the same thing that actually happens with a lot of these really good psychic vampires. They can link in with someone energetically, and I think it's what do you call the hyperdimensional beings that are actually working through a human host. You know what I mean? Like an organic portal host.
Oh, yeah.
And so that actually creates, once they link in with them energetically, usually in the chakras, could be the solar plexus or the sexual one, or even the heart. And then it creates this bliss feeling, but it can put them in kind of a love-obsessed state where they're feeling bliss and connection with that person, to the point of falling obsessively in love with them, to the point of having extreme psychic bonding, where they're literally telepathic and empathic with that other person. So what happens in let's say, the drama of the love obsession, not only do you have this strong, let's say, déjà vu, love at first sight, you have this immediate linking, which is incongruent. For a lot of times you don't even have physical contact with the person, but you just have this sudden linking in, like you've known them for years and you've made love for years, and you don't even know like how it happened. So it's because there's a link in you somehow, an energetic link that's already been created somehow. And I think the aliens can catalyze and manipulate those psychic links between people, and then they act as a type of middleman that's actually feeding on those energy links.
Well, and then are there other signs too? For example, when they think about that person, or if that person calls them, makes contact, they look at the clock and it's 11:11, or stuff like that?
Totally. It's amazing. Like things like that would happen. I noticed it, I guess, in the first book, where people would think, "Oh my God, this is my soulmate. This is my twin flame. This is so unusual." Just last night I had a dream about such and such, and then today, this song came on the radio, and then I saw the same car, and then all of a sudden, it was this person, and everything was linking together in these synchronistic ways. Sometimes numerologically, sometimes with songs or TV shows or whatever. That would be much beyond coincidence. And this would lock in the feeling that this is meant to be. And I think it's a type of magic that's happening, that there's something to do with when our heart energy is tapped into, when that soul essence energy is activated in us. We can actually create these things ourselves once we have that activated in us. But I think that the aliens are kind of directing this, that they can use us to be creators with our own energy, but they link in and direct and kind of manipulate what they want through us, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So this could be happening. It's like the love energy and the sexual energy is very, very powerful. And I think that they just tap into this and use it the way they would want to use it. And then if we, get caught up in a love spell, we may, give that our energy and our attention more so than we should, because a lot of times it leads us down a path of, extreme trauma, drama, and energy exhaustion to the point of sometimes physical illness. And in my Dark Side of Cupid book, there were some severe cases where the people almost died because they were so vampirized energetically. And so they just became under a lot of psychic and spiritual attack as a result of being connected with someone who, and this is something I'm seeing more and more, by the way, and it's not just, quote, alien love bite. It's a type of predator. It's a type of connection with someone who tends to have, let's say, psychopathology. Let's say a partner has psychopathologic features, such as narcissistic or borderline personality disorder. And then that person will be acting as, sometimes they're very charismatic, like even spiritual gurus or teachers or famous people. And women may, it's not just men, it can be either way, but people will get linked into them psychically, maybe as their teacher or their guru or whatever. And then they psychically link in with them with astral connections and astral sex and this Kundalini thing where there's a lot of energetic linking going on and control. So it creates these love obsession things where they actually link in and control and feed on them. And pretty soon this person has been opened up energetically and psychically, and they can't, it's like they're tormented. I mean, I've had people under torment of having their Kundalini artificially activated, and to the point of them just not being able to handle it at all. And they're under attack by a type of sorcerer that is basically what I call a possessed person in a human body, being basically a vampire and a controller to them. So that's the extreme end of the situation. But those are happening more and more with what I'm calling, we can call them the wolves in sheep's clothing or reptilians in sheep clothing or whatever they are. But it's like a new type of predator is starting to come out in full force that we're recognizing now for certain kinds of energy predation and spiritual predation characteristics. So that's what I felt was important enough to write my second book, because there was something else going on that was not necessarily related to the alien abduction phenomena, but related to a type of predator that was linked into a very malevolent psychic vampire spirit. And it was creating these same kinds of effects or worse. So
I'm thinking of many of the books that I have read and studied on hermetics, the occult, mysticism, not just the dogmatic rituals, but the mental practices and such, and also the sexual magic that I have researched. It seems to me like these ETs, interdimensionals, or these entities, whatever they are, whoever they are using these same tools and techniques. And it makes me think, wow, okay, so this is like a intergalactic almost form of something that works. Like it's almost science, but people can't really understand it, so they put a label on it of hermetics or the occult or the unknown, because that's the definition of occult, is the unknown. But in reality, if you know how to use or integrate these certain energies, like these beings are that tend to kind of set a stage so they can feed off of certain energies. It's almost like we're avatars, and these things are in the matrix, and they're like, okay, we're gonna create this scenario with these two people over here, because the kind of energy that they're going to create, we're gonna feed off of. Like for somebody that's eating king crab legs right out of the Alaskan waters, it would be similar to that for these ETs, right? For them, it's like a gourmet buffet. It's a 5-star meal, and they're drinking the wine of pain, and they're eating the flesh of suffering of that person that just got injected with a vaccine that caused an adverse reaction or whatever. I'm just using that as an example. And yeah, it's just amazing. But the more research that I've done, I think that you're really onto something here, Eve.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot going on that mimics things that sorcerers, magicians, and some tantric practitioners have known for years and years and years. And I think that there's many, let's say, magicians and sorcerers who are working, I think, through the dark side, that they know how to do this, that they can create the same effect, because they may have, let's say, they're working with entities, familiar spirits, demons, whatever you want to call them, that are their helpers. And then these beings link in with the other person to help create like love connections. And then, so the other person, it's like a love spell. I mean, you could fall in love with this person, and then all your energy is going towards them. And then meanwhile, they're using that energy for their, whether it's sexual, magical.
To power the spacecraft around the stars.
Or creating realities and other dimensional realities, or it could be just actually amplifying their career in a reality creation kind of way. So we're actually seeing this with the new predator, let's say spiritual sexual predators, where they're linking in maybe with hundreds, if not more, of people who are their healing clients, where they're linking in with them. And then because they're hooked in with like a entity, they could work thousands of people and then link in all that energy. But then it makes the sorcerer or the operator very wealthy, because they're getting all this energy to create. So it's actually building them up on the material world or the energy world, where it's draining the other people. Or the other people could be caught and think it's their soulmate and it's all this wonderful stuff, and they're just being used by these predators. And that's what I think is happening in less the dark side of Cupid. So, and the energy actually feeds their operations. So I believe this is happening in a way, what we can call it advanced science, or you can call it black meta technology, for lack of a better term, where there's beings who can take this energy and then spin it in other dimensional realities, such as the astral realm. And then they can create entire dimensional realities out of this life force. And then they spin off artificial timeline realities with all this life force that's taken through various magical operations or rituals. So I believe some of that's what's basically the power source that's operating a lot of this.
And
so
also, I wonder how many movies that are brought into Hollywood, these blockbuster films that hundreds of millions of people see. I remember I had an interview with Gano Grills a couple months ago, and he's done movies in Hollywood, friends with Samuel L. Jackson. I asked him about a couple of the rituals in Hollywood, because he did bring up how there's a lot of magic behind the scenes there. And one of the rituals he told me about was some of the people that are the big wigs that we don't even know about many times. When I say we, I'm referring to people that aren't in that scene. They want to have sex with the stars that are getting to be, before they get big, and they want to have those fresh fruits and stuff like that, as he called it. And then he also brought up something about how a lot of the stuff that we see in Hollywood, the scripts and such, even if a writer puts it on paper, sometimes they channel information. And a lot of the stuff that's in Hollywood is outer worldly, because there's stuff in movies that you can watch, like the film Knowing, where it predicts the Gulf oil disaster and the Fukushima disaster to the exact day. I mean, it's just frightening. So what are your thoughts on the possibility of Hollywood having a big influence on people's psyche, as well as maybe ET presence within Hollywood?
Oh, well, I mean, Hollywood's known to be, infiltrated by a high level, what we're calling Illuminati, and their people and the connections they make and the entities that work behind these bloodline groups who do the rituals. So I would say they're very much influenced and would have inside information. And the person who really knows a lot about that, of course, there's many who study the whole Hollywood thing, but Max Spears is somebody who knows a lot about the ritualism and the occult symbols and what's being done through the entertainment industry and media to, use people. And so it's under a lot of control, and they can utilize the energy of people's focused attention, let's say with the movies. And this is something that Barbara Bartholick, would say. She'd say, well, they're engineering these mass unrequited love obsessions with superstars or rock stars, and they're creating the environment so that all our attention's being poured towards a particular superstar. And then there's ways, I think, to even harvest that energy.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I totally spaced that. Thank you for refreshing my memory here. So you've got a sex symbol in Hollywood or the entertainment industry. I'm not even going to use a name, but a very beautiful blonde gal that's got an amazing body and an amazing face, as an example. And then there's 50,000 guys that see her and they, wow, she's gorgeous. And maybe they do something to themselves while they're looking at that picture, does that project energy towards that person, almost like a group harvest of sexual energy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this could be extended to what porn is doing. And I mean, I really think there's some kind of artificial intelligence connection with online forms of when we direct our attention and our sexual energy in certain ways. It's just our intention anyway, but I think it causes a type of addiction and a link to be set up between these other dimensional beings who are, linking in and linking off that energy. So definitely.
That's incredible. And, it's interesting. A lot of times when I do interviews on this specific subject, on the ET phenomenon, my internet connection gets disconnected multiple times throughout the interview. And I've noticed that continues to happen during this show, yet for some reason our Skype connection is still staying connected, even though it says I'm disconnected. So very interesting to say the least. Have you ever, you said you've had personal experiences, and I was wondering if maybe you could share some of those with us.
Oh, goodness. Oh, I don't even know if I wouldn't know where to start. It's just that I know that...
Really? That many, huh? That's all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had it since I was a child, and I didn't really understand the depth of it until I really researched more and did more like meditation and energy expanding awareness exercises and therapy and clearing to get more clear on how this happens. And I think it's not always a physical event, but it often is physical when you're younger. And it seems to, I think they have better technology now to do now what they did years ago, and that it's much more difficult to even tell now, especially with the people who are having the military, what we call the military abductions, and the kinds of experiences they're having with like the virtual reality scenarios and things that tend to be taking place in a type of lucid dream state, or they're accessed out of their body. And so one of the things that is being talked about a lot, of course, Donald Marshall and Og Tellez, the celebrity cloning centers and that kind of thing. But even in let's say, the alien abduction research with Milabs and people like Dr. Corrado Malanga of Italy, he studied many alien abduction testimonies and interviews and hypnosis sessions where basically they remember they'll be taken out of the body, or they'll be abducted in body and then put into like a type of, they called it a cloning chamber or some kind of chamber where they put in their body, and then it vibrates it really, really fast till it basically sucks out and jerks out their etheric and astral body. And then that astral body, etheric body goes into another body, like either an alien body or a clone of themselves. So people think that these kinds of things are happening where there's actually clones or copies made of their physical body that are in stasis until they're used. And so they could just transfer the consciousness from their physical body during night when they're sleeping. They could literally just upload your consciousness and put it into a clone body, and then have that clone body go out on an operation. And it could be what I call a military operation, or any number of things, including, sexual activity and all these other awful things that are being reported by, let's say, Donald Marshall and some of the more perverse Illuminati satanic ritual kinds of things. So there's that going on where I think that's happening. And so people have memories, but they're like, this couldn't have happened in my physical body. There's no evidence, but their consciousness was somehow uploaded, and they were either put into a cloned body or made to feel like this is a real experience, and they'll have full memory of these experiences, and they could even confirm them with other people who are in the same experience. So it's not like just their own, quote, delusion. They could actually cross-check it with others who are in the same experience, and they're like, yeah, I dreamed that too last night, So these are the kind of things that we figured out years ago in our support group when we started talking more about our dreams and what kinds of things we were experiencing that was outside of what we thought were just the typical alien abduction or military abduction things. So we tended to have joint experiences together that they weren't necessarily physical, but they were astral, or they were somehow pulling out our consciousness and putting us in these experiences together, including like love bite stuff, where they had put people together to see if they would bond, and then later see if they would, want to meet later in life. So they would do this pre-bonding stuff with people in these alternate reality states. So I think there's a technology that enables this somehow.
Now, have you been physically abducted before?
Well, I can't say if it was absolute physical. I remember it as a physical event. but I couldn't give you physical proof. Even now, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, these things happened when I was younger, so, you know.
Do you remember getting taken onto a craft, or were you in like a metallic room on a metallic table? I've heard similar testimonies about that, so that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, a craft being taken up in a craft by a light that descends down from the center of the craft, and then having it literally levitate you up off the ground, and then in my experience I blacked out, so there was no memory after the light thing pulled me up. So yeah, I mean, the medical things was real common, actually, where several family members within a 2-3 day period, we'd all have, similar, what we call the abduction medical checkup dreams, where we'd all like, oh, did you have a medical checkup dream? Yeah, I woke up with like blood in my ear or whatever, a mark on my arm or whatever. And then we'd all have, it's like they do their medical checkups on this family members all within like the same 3-day period. So we know that they would do things, but we couldn't prove it, but it would tend to happen to each other or in the same cluster during the same periods of time. So they would tend to do like medical checkups every now and then, or they come, take an old implant out and put a new one in, kind of thing. So
do you have Rh negative blood type?
Yes, that's actually a
I knew
common
it.
O negative or AB negative. But one of the things that was really interesting, I don't think it's in my book, but there was several people that I've come across where they had blood types that changed from O negative to A, or from O negative to O positive, or O to A or A to O, where their blood type actually changed. And there was at least 3 people who had that. And there's one case of a researcher I was corresponding with where he actually had medical evidence to prove that this woman, her blood type changed from like A to O. And it was just an anomaly. So there's unusual things with the blood type. And it's believed that the Rh negative may descend from, some people say, it comes from the reptilian or the Draco lines, but it's really unknown, to be honest. I really don't know what the origin of that is.
Well, it just seems interesting because a lot of the people that I've talked to, and even people that I know that have Rh negative blood, they seem to be more prone to abductions, contact experiences. I have a friend that actually gets followed around by this black shadow being, and she's not the only one that sees it. I mean, there's several people around her that see it. And it's a family thing as well. Not only does she have these experiences, but her mom does, her sister does. So there's probably a generational connection there based upon the DNA and as well as that blood type. And do you have like the extra vertebrae in your back and certain things that most people with positive blood don't have?
I'm not sure if it's related to blood type, but I mean, I don't really want to go on about my personal stuff, but I will say there's some things that are reported, kind of like the extra rib, or one of the things was it had to do with the, what do you call it, the axis C1, the top vertebrae is differently shaped. And this happened to a couple of people that I know were both abductees that it just turned out to be quite an anomaly. And it was such an anomaly in this one person that his doctor wanted to do exploratory surgery to find out why it was so different. I'm like, well, that's interesting. So some say that there are some physical differences, a lot of sensitivities, certain kinds of allergies. And I think I wrote about that in my book, my first book. Usually they're very energy sensitive people in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. And if you could walk us through maybe 1 or 2 of the most incredible cases that you've worked on with these love bites that you've had a chance to write about in The Love Bite or The Dark Side of Cupid. And I'd also recommend our listeners go to evelorgan.com and also on Facebook, if you look up Evie Lorgan, EVIELORGEN, you can have contact possibly with Eve. Now, that's your Facebook as well, correct?
Yeah, the Facebook's Evie Lorgan. And I actually have one under Eve Lorgan too, but the Evie Lorgan, I'm more likely to answer messages.
Okay.
But, yeah, and speaking of really interesting cases, there's a case in The Love Bite. Of course, there's several that are really good. Some were recounted from other people's experiences where they already did their own book. One of them is called Mia and the FBI Agent, and that's a case history in the Love Bite. And that one was really good because Mia was a female, quote, abductee who had many experiences throughout her life, including a military abduction. And then the man that she had a strong connection with was employed by the FBI. And it turned out that they were actually related because it was an experiment of aliens wanting to test non-tangible energies and bonding through, basically, she was the mitochondrial mother of this man. So it turned out that, when she was like 17 years old, she was taken by some military who did a harvesting of one of her ova, and then the nuclear DNA was extracted, and that ova, I guess, was put in a woman who couldn't conceive with other DNA. So basically there was 3 parents to that particular child, right, who was the FBI agent, who turned out to be actually her son. And, they had a close bonded connection. And there was so much interference in that particular case, including, vindication that this indeed was a alien study. And so that was a good case because it had a lot of evidence in terms of the military element, the alien bonding, scenarios, and all the types of interference that takes place in someone's life. And this woman was actually believed apparently by the FBI and whoever these watching military covert groups, that they basically claimed that she was part alien and told the FBI agent that, and he was basically surveilling her. And it was a long, complicated case, but basically, implies that, there's people these covert groups who are operating through shadow military government, that they're following certain alien abductees who don't even know that they're abductees necessarily, and don't even know that they're allegedly part alien or definitely augmented DNA or different genetic markers. So I think that's actually happening a lot more, that there's people who are genetically different. And you're seeing that in some of the, the hybrid testimonies now in the alien contacts experience thing. So that was a good case that demonstrated not only the love bite, but a scientific thing behind it, which I explained. And, the involvement of the military, the FBI, and these covert groups working with aliens and the reptilian agenda, and da-da-da-da. So that was good. And, of course, the Ted Rice case I recounted from the Masquerade of Angels book that Dr. Carla Turner wrote. And Ted Rice was an abductee who Barbara Bartholic did a lot of the hypnotic regressions with really good information, because she was able to get through screen memories and some of the things that play out in certain people's lives. Sometimes the aliens or certain types, let's say reptilians, who are masquerading as other beings, that they will try to put the theatrics on these people, that they're channeling spirit guides, that they're benevolent, and some of the first level of memory may be something that they think is healing, like angels coming to you, for example, and putting you together with your soulmate. When it comes to find out, it's like the really aliens and these reptilians are behind it. So she basically got through all the memories to get to the root of what was going on in the Ted Rice case, which included, a major love bite, as well as cloning and all kinds of things. So those are 2 really good cases that are in the love bite. And in the Dark Side of Cupid, I have actually a really good MyLab case in there where in the appendix is an interview with a woman named Marit, a Scandinavian woman, where she basically gave a lot of personal information as response to some of my interview questions. And then there's 2 really severe cases of the Dark Side of Cupid where the target, the partner, was a predator or a host for a malevolent entity such as a reptilian or a snake-like being, where the man, it was a man in that case, actually knew he was not human, okay? And they flaunted it. They flaunted it with all kinds of games and pretty creepy stuff, to be honest, and life-threatening things. So that was basically the far end of the more dangerous cases in the Dark Side of Cupid. Although most of them they're not as bad, but we're starting to see that there's a connection with some of these Satanist organizations and malevolent entities and hosted people that are playing games this way and working through agencies that are infiltrated, like social service agencies and that kind of thing. So yeah, you'll get a lot out of both books.
Well, and that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about is, have you gotten into the possibility of influence over political figures and key individuals that have powerful positions in large corporations?
Definitely, definitely. Well, I mean, a lot of the children of, let's say, who having MILAB experiences, very often they are family members or children of people who had careers in, let's say, military industrial complex or high level political, let's say, parents in those fields, or high level, what we call Illuminati bloodline. The bloodline families tend to have people who are in the MILAB projects more. So, yeah, let's see, there was a case. Which one was it? Oh, it was in The Dark Side of Cupid. It was actually based on one of Bud Hopkins' earlier cases that had to do with the Linda Corteil case called Witnessed. And that was a really good love bite case because she had memory of being bonded many times throughout her life, along with the man who was bonded to her, who was an FBI agent, by the way. Yeah, just like the other guy. And so they both remembered, pre-bonding as children and then later meeting in life. And so in that particular case, in the Love Bite, I recounted it, interviewing Linda Corteil as well. And, there was a high-level government person from another country who was actually visiting, and three, I guess two FBI agents and a high-level political person from another country. I don't know if it was a diplomat, actually observed the abduction that was happening when she was being literally floated out the window, at a high rise in Manhattan going into a UFO. And they literally saw it, her floating through the air during an abduction. So they were surveilling this whole case, and a whole Love Bite thing opened up. And there was all these unusual manipulations that when I observed the case now, basically this was just a big charade and a big game to show that they can do this and manipulate high-level politicians on top of it all. So it was kind of like a slap in the face that, these beings, they're doing things like this all the time. They can manipulate anybody pretty much.
And do you ever wonder, since you've done so much work on this, if they're influencing you or trying to steer you in certain directions as well?
Well, I've definitely become aware of what I call it, the dream hacking, and where you get the telepathic messages, and then, somebody will email you that corresponds to a telepathic message, and then they're trying to steer you in a certain direction, or they're trying to set you up with a handler. I mean, all kinds of things happen. So all I have to do is just stay really open and aware and stay focused on what I believe is the most important thing. And it's basically helping people get through their experiences and to resolve their traumas and to get a greater handle of sovereignty on their own personal lives. So, my priority is more therapeutics as opposed to research, although I think research is very important. It's just that, we can be skewed. And let's say 15, 20 years ago, I may have believed something that is different than what I believe now. Although now it's more like I'm streamlining my views based on refinement, as opposed to maybe black and white change of direction or anything like that. So I just have to become really aware and really careful of what I'm aware of and how I'm feeling and what I'm dreaming about and who's coming into my life. And so I'm very aware. I do my best to not be manipulated. But I think anybody can, to be honest. That's just the way it is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember from the age of 14, my communications teacher back in high school was teaching us about how the media can manipulate people based upon sounds, effects, how long they report on something, what they don't report on, etc. And ever since then, I've just been building from that. It's amazing how much people can be controlled and influenced behind the scenes. So with something like an extraterrestrial, let's say, that has been around for 5,000 years in a certain body or something. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but a race of beings that have been evolving spiritually, mentally, physically much longer than us possibly, or just have different technologies in conjunction with the technologies that our own government and military has, black ops type stuff behind the scenes. If you don't know what you're looking for, it'd be pretty easy to be manipulated. So it's great to speak with people like you, Eve, and I just really appreciate everything that you do. I would recommend the listeners once again go to evelorgan.com. You can purchase the books The Love Bite, Alien Interference of Human Love Relationships, and The Dark Side of Cupid, two excellent books. And I'm also wondering, as far as the MyLab stuff goes, how much control they have now with social media, being able to pick out certain people based upon what they post.
Oh, you mean social media in terms of, let's say, mainstream, what they want to present in terms of, let's say, disclosure, and what they're choosing that gets a lot of hits, so that when people put their attention towards, well, what's happening now and what's being disclosed, I think that they have their front people everywhere. My sense is that whenever there's when they're really popular, then they tend to be people who could be used to adjust public opinion. I find that the truth tends to be more with, I don't know how to say it, working with independent, smaller people, where you don't necessarily hit the mainstream opinions, but you find out more information through private testimonies, and many, many testimonies in a private way, to get a certain feeling for what's happening. And this is why, actually, as a, quote, therapist and an independent researcher, I find that it's better to get research working one-on-one with people who are having direct experiences, who haven't even gone public, as opposed to people who are, the armchair researchers, or they're only public about certain cases, So I feel like I get it from you, and that, you have to be careful that my assessment is, okay, there's one person who's, let's say, a big disclosure person, and they're directing the public opinion towards a certain spin control. And we have to ask the question, what is this person's history? What's really going on in their life? Were they being taken all their life? Are they an MK Ultra? Are they unrecovered mind control project person? Are they being heavily influenced by entities or programs to carry out a specific spin control opinion? And is there any evidence of that? And has the person done their own personal work, so that if they're having, let's say, a lot of paranormal experiences, have they done a deep investigation in their own life in terms of being honest about their own therapeutic, healing, personal growth process, so that they're not manipulated? So people with big egos are not likely to do that. I can tell you that right now. So that's one thing you got to look for. If somebody has a big ego, they're most likely going to be manipulated to say something that's a part of a spin control, public opinions.
Or if they find what your weaknesses are, or what you're striving for, somebody that's real crafty with psychology, they can use that as a selling point to get you to go towards a certain direction. So, that's why it's amazing that we can do what we can. With all the manipulation and stuff that's out there, it's like we live in the Twilight Zone. Even the media tells you one thing. If it's on the mainstream news, it's usually the exact opposite.
Yeah, and they have to, I just think that, the more mainstream they are, the more they have to abide by the rules of their bosses and what I call their controllers, that are, basically controlling the public opinion, or what they're going to disclose. But the smaller people who tend to have truth, the smaller people, the smaller shows, in general.
It's great to speak with you, Eve. I hope that you continue to write books and come up with more information, and it certainly would be nice to have an opportunity to speak with you again as well.
Oh, yeah. I would be happy to. One of the things that I wanted to point out was that I've been involved in some what we call the web discussion panels that are several hours long, with 5, 6 of my colleagues, who have talked specifically about the love bite and the dark side of Cupid with respect to our personal experiences in this, as well as observation, let's say, with clients. And we did this on the love bite. It's called the Love Bite Plus. Tom Montauk and Carissa Conte, Bernard Gunther, James Bartley, myself, Laura Leon, and another key individual from Mexico, where we all talked about specifically the love bite, dark side of Cupid, the false twin flame thing. We talked about that at length, about the things that, we can identify, what we can do about it, so it's not so bad. And then we also did another panel, which was really good. We wanted to do this on a more general perspective. Instead of just being, quote, the love bite, we wanted to present it as hyperdimensional interference and the keys to discernment, to find out if this is happening and how it happens, not only on a micro individual scale in our own personal relationships, but also how this is happening at a macro scale in the world, and how this manifests in different ways, what we're calling the hyperdimensional interference level of control and manipulation of the human race, and what that's about and how to deal with it, including there's a lot of people complaining about, I'm a targeted individual. I feel so hopeless, da 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 da. And people get on these, hopelessness, and it's all technology. There's nothing we can do. And I don't believe that at all. I feel like that there's definitely solutions, and they're more simple than what we think, and that we can get sovereignty and control by learning how to, let's say, not react when these things occur to us, so that we don't give it our emotional energy, and we do our healing work. We stay focused. We don't, let's say, allow someone in our game or join the game of someone else to be pulled in for more manipulation. We talk all about that on these panel discussions. So if anybody had any questions, they want to hear more in-depth information from other people who've had these experiences, definitely you can listen to these panels. They're both on YouTube. I think Tom Montauk's channel as well as Bernard Gunther's channel. And I'm going to have my own channel set up. I just don't have time to do it. But yeah, we're going to do more panels on things like that, including the reptilian possession and hosting phenomena with the new predator, because this is something that's, I'm getting report after report after report with something like this. So we felt, okay, it's time to talk about this with some real experiencers who are willing to come forward to talk about how this happens and how to recognize it and what to do about it, so that we don't have to be afraid and fall into a victim mode. So yeah, there's a lot in the works right now. So.
Well, I'm certainly going to have to get you in contact with people that I've actually had on the show here at the Leak Project. One person in particular that is a targeted individual, he's shown me video footage of a full-sized airplane literally following him around, and then it would just hover. Like this thing was hovering almost like it had some type of anti-gravity technology, and you could see him. He's driving around in a pretty busy town, and this plane isn't that, it isn't super high up into the air, and then it actually just sits there, and it's like you can almost see it looking at him, and then when he starts driving, it starts following him. And the day after he posted that video on YouTube, he goes outside of his house, and there's a rabbit with its head cut off and no blood in his driveway.
Yeah. In fact, I have clients where they're being buzzed by helicopters and military jets, and there's certain people, I think they're key individuals that are part of, like, say, military abductions or certain kinds of abductions, where I believe that they're powerful people who are being accessed, and they're trying to become free, and so it's almost like a threat that when they start doing these kinds of things to show their guns, but I believe that there's ways to get around that, and that not to be afraid and not to react, and to continue with your intentions to become free and do your clearing work and not get caught up in the drama, because the drama is a kind of way of getting distracted and feeding that other energy. So there's ways to get around that. We talked about that on our panel, but I wouldn't discount that these things aren't happening to people, because I know they're happening to people and they're very real. So.
Well, it's certainly been nice to speak with you, Eve. I hope you have a wonderful day. Folks, check out evelorgan.com, EVELORGEN.com, as well as Facebook, and a whole bunch of new stuff coming on their new website. Also, check out our website, leakproject.com. If you subscribe and become a member, you will have access to exclusive content, first and free. Sometimes we upload multiple shows on a daily basis, so check back every single day. Stay safe and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Good night.
Good night.